you. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's an honor to stand here before you representing over 60 community hospitals all throughout the state of South Carolina within the South Carolina Hospital Association, and to share with you our position concerning the Medicaid expansion of the Affordable Care Act. All right, since I'm starting, I do want to share a little bit of background to make sure that we are all on the same page and talk about 3 points of this presentation, our position as a hospital association, and offer some final thoughts. First, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was signed into law on March the 23rd, 2010, and ever since the law was signed, it has been challenged, and through a number of lawsuits, it ultimately went to the Supreme Court, which on June the 28th decided to uphold the law. The individual mandates were upheld, as well as the exchanges and insurance rules. What did change, though, is that Medicaid expansion as part of the Affordable Care Act is now an option for each state, and that's what we'll mainly be talking about and discussing today. Subsidies are now available to individuals from 100% of the federal poverty level. We'll talk about that later, too. States do not opt into the Medicaid expansion. So the political question that we'll be talking about and addressing tonight is, what will states do concerning the Medicaid expansion of the Affordable Care Act? And I'd like to share some background. We've been here before in decisions concerning Medicaid. When it was first signed into law back in the late 1960s, only 6 states originally signed on to accept Medicaid as it was created. Those states are listed above. Then 20 states signed on later that year. 11 states joined in a year later. 13 more states, including our state, joined between 1968 and 1972. Arizona held on very strong until 1982, and then eventually all states did participate in Medicaid, as well as our S-CHIP program. So we can look back at some of the history that we've been in this dilemma before as states consider what to do concerning Medicaid. What's very interesting about this debate is that the states that would benefit the most are now the states saying that they will likely choose not to opt into the Medicaid expansion. And this slide is from Kaiser, and it was posted in the Washington Post, and it's based on the number of uninsured adults who could qualify with the Medicaid expansion and how the number of uninsured adults would decrease if that state opted into Medicaid expansion. You see that South Carolina would benefit the 4th most, if you will, in the nation if we accepted the Medicaid expansion, mainly because right now we don't cover many uninsured adults in our current Medicaid program. So right now, who isn't participating? We've got 8 states who've officially made some kind of statement, primarily through their governors, that they're not participating. Of course, the decision to participate or not participate will ultimately lie within each state's General Assembly in the next coming months. Primarily southern states, South Carolina is included as well. The 3 points I want to make on behalf of the Hospital Association is this is such a critical decision that we have to make for our citizens and our communities. And there are 3 things that we need to take into consideration. The first, we represent the hospitals, is the hospital impact. Hospitals agreed nationally to reimbursement cuts in order to fund the Affordable Care Act in exchange for increase of coverage. The Medicaid expansion would be a huge part of that increase in coverage in South Carolina. If we do not opt into the Medicaid expansion, we will not realize that increase in coverage that was promised to us through the Affordable Care Act with the reimbursement cuts. So South Carolina hospitals will be cut, regardless of our decision, $2.7 billion in the next 7 years without the increase in coverage that we were expecting through the Affordable Care Act. These cuts cannot and will not be absorbed without some type of negative impact on our workforces. We employ over 80,000 South Carolinians. They use that fund, their wages, over $4 billion in wages, to support local businesses and their neighbors. It can't be absorbed without some type of impact on critical services that our citizens rely on: maternity, community health, and other services as well. There will also be a new coverage gap that will be created if we do not accept the Medicaid expansion. Families making as much as $94,000 a year will get some type of assistance to purchase insurance through the exchange. But many poor in South Carolina, those in poverty, will not receive any type of assistance, including 65,000 uninsured citizens between ages 50 and 64 who paid their dues, worked hard, and will not receive any type of coverage. This is a graphic demonstration of a new coverage gap that would exist if South Carolina does not accept the Medicaid expansion. We will assist people that are pretty well off, but those in poverty and below will receive no assistance through the Affordable Care Act. And the economic impact is very important too. $11.2 billion of new funding coming into our state will bring in 44,000 jobs. $1.5 billion in new labor income, according to a new study produced by the Moore School of Business here at the University of South Carolina. Those costs, or those increases in funds to our state, will completely offset any cost that our state would incur with the Medicaid expansion. I'm going to graphically just show you what that would look like. Of course, the Medicaid expansion with the Affordable Care Act, the federal government will fund 100% of it the first 3 years, and it goes down to no less than 90% after 2020. But the general funds that would be generated by new jobs, economic input, and the multiplier effect would bring great income into our state. So we need to really seriously look at the hospital, human, and economic impact when making this deliberation. Regardless of what happens, our hospitals will take care of the uninsured. It's required by federal law. But that cost has to be borne by someone, and we have two options. We'll either let the other states help us to pay 90% of it, and that's essentially what's being offered by the Affordable Care Act with the Medicaid expansion, or we will continue to absorb that cost on our own and pass it on to persons with private insurance through the cost shift. The question I want to leave you with tonight: which strategy will make South Carolina more competitive?